Okay, so in this video we are going to be changing out the center channel or dash speaker in my 2008 Grand Prix. Now this applies to anyone who has an 04 to 08 Grand Prix, doesn't matter of the trim, with the Monsoon stereo system. And you know that you have the Monsoon system when you have this speaker that is in the center of the dash. The reason that I'm actually changing mine out is because I still have the stock speaker and it's starting to rattle. That happens with age. Most likely the previous owner listened to the music pretty loud, and from what I've been reading, the center channel going out is actually a fairly common problem. So I actually don't listen to music all that often. I listen to more talk radio than anything, and it seems to be more pronounced with voice, with somebody talking rather than actual music playing. So I'm going to go ahead and get this thing changed out. Now you've got a couple of options. You could just go to the dealer and get a new speaker. Surprisingly, as of this video, a new speaker from the dealer is right around $15 to $20, which is, in my opinion, pretty reasonable. But you may be wanting to upgrade your system, and so you can get something as cheap as $20 or as expensive as $60, and it all depends on your personal preferences. For me personally, as I said, I don't listen to music all that much when I'm in the car. I went ahead and got something that's a middle of the road, and this is actually what I picked up. Now again, it doesn't matter about the brand or anything else like that. It depends on how much you want to spend and with the quality of the speaker that you want. So anyway, any 3.5 inch speaker will actually work. It'll fit in the stock spot there. So as long as you have a 3.5 inch speaker, then you're okay. Now keep in mind, most of the speakers that you buy come in pairs, and unfortunately there's only one dash speaker, so you're gonna have an extra speaker. Now sort of the good news, if you want to look at it like that, is the speakers that are in the doors at the bottom are actually the same size. So if you had one that was going out in your door, you could actually replace that one as well, so you don't waste the other speaker. So anyway, with all brands and everything aside, let's go ahead and get started on replacing the dash speaker. So the very first thing that you need to do is you need to get the speaker grill off. This protective grill right here. It's actually very, very easy to get off. Just make sure that you take your time and you don't damage the dash, because this is actually pretty fragile when you take a flat blade screwdriver and you're wedging it in there. So just take your time. But essentially what you do is you put your flat blade screwdriver, and you want one that's pretty wide. You don't want one that's really, really small, because that's just going to make an imprint on your dash. But what you do is you slide it in right about right there, and you press down a little bit. And by doing that, you're actually exposing the underside of the speaker grill. And you slide your your flat blade screwdriver underneath just like that, so you can see it's underneath. And then you just basically very gently pry up, and you can see that it's starting to pop up. And what I like to do is go around rather than just in one single spot, because I don't want to make a pressure point or indent in the dash. So real nice and easy, and it should pop up after a minute, just like that. All right, so now the speaker grill is actually off. We can get it right here, and this is a really good time to actually clean this really well, vacuum it out. I mean, mine's not really that bad. I try to keep my dash pretty clean, but this is a good time to just kind of clean this up. If you want to put any Armor All or any other plastic protectant that you want on here, this is a really good time to do this. So yeah, so with that aside, now we can actually get to the speaker, which is right there. And yeah, it's a pretty stock speaker. I mean, there's there's not much to say about it. It's a Monsoon speaker, and in my opinion, it's a little bit underpowered for the actual Monsoon system. You can see, you might be able to see that. I'm not sure about the camera angle, but there's actually 2 Phillips head screws, one at this end here underneath there and one at the opposite end. You're going to need a short Phillips screwdriver in order to get this to work, because the dash is actually, or excuse me, the windshield is actually going to be in the way. So you cannot use, for example, you cannot use something like this that's going to be too big, because you can see here the actual windshield is in the way. So you're going to want something that's going to be shorter like this, that's actually going to be able to reach in there. Now, I also have a stubby Phillips head screwdriver that I can use that should work, but I'm going to go ahead and use this one. But anyway, you can see that there's one screw right there, and then there's one at the actual opposite end. It's kind of awkward, but just kind of feel around until you get it, and you should be able to get the screws out fairly easy. Now, optionally, you could in fact use a 7mm socket and ratchet, which in my opinion is actually the easier option, just because you have more torque to be able to get the screws out. But again, that is completely up to you how you do it. Most people use just Phillips head screwdrivers. Depending on how tight the screws are, you may actually need to use one of these. So either way is going to work just fine. So should be easy enough. Okay, both screws are out. This is what they look like. Pretty standard 7mm Phillips head screws. Fairly common in pretty much all General Motors vehicles. But anyway, now the speaker is detached. Now we can actually lift it up and out. You'll see on the back here, there's this harness right here, okay? Real easy to get off. Just take your time. I mean, really, if you're in a hurry, you shouldn't be doing this, but just unplug the harness. You can see that it's actually fairly simple to get off. Okay, now the easiest way that I've actually found to get this off is, you can see there's a little tab on the inside there. Just take your flat blade screwdriver right up underneath here and just kind of twist it back and forth while you're pulling on the harness, and it should release it just fine. You can see right there, see if I can zoom in on that, there's a little tab on the inside there. So once you get your screwdriver up underneath there, it should detach pretty easily. Alright, so here is the actual old speaker, a Monsoon speaker. If anybody's curious as to exactly what it is, you can look right there. So anyway, yeah, this is the original. It's, you know, it's not that old actually, but it's a pretty cheap speaker in my opinion. It really is. So here's the new one right here. It's pretty nice. I mean, it's definitely not top of the line by any means, but it's definitely an improvement over this stock paper cone speaker here. This one will probably handle anything I could possibly throw at it. Some of you may be looking for some extreme audio, high fidelity audio, in which case you'll get something like a Pioneer, or you know, any of the upper end brands will probably suit your needs. But this is fine for me. I'm not installing this to make it super loud. Just get rid of the annoying buzz, and then allow it to handle whatever I can throw at it, basically. So now for what is arguably the most difficult part of this install is actually transferring over the harness, which is right here, from the old speaker to the new one, right there. It's actually not that difficult. You just need a solder gun, solder iron, and some solder. You can even actually get away with moving some of the solder over if you want to, but I'm just going to go ahead and use some solder, which I have right here, and just a cheap run-of-the-mill solder iron. Pretty easy, shouldn't take that long. Obviously, careful not to burn yourself, you know, those kind of things. But basically, what you want to do, you actually could just cut this off at this end if you wanted to. the positive and negative. You can just cut this off. Red is obviously positive, black is negative. So that'll make it easier for you to transfer the wire over to the new speaker. Now, as far as this piece right here that you can see right there, this actually just slides right off, but I'm going to unsolder it first because there's not much room, not much wire there to actually yank it off, because it's most likely going to possibly damage the wire, which is obviously something we don't want to do. Okay, so I went ahead and got the wire unsoldered and off. Optionally, you could just cut it. I mean, that's probably the easier way. But I wanted to retain as much of this wire as I possibly could. Now this part here, you can actually see, actually connects to this screw and holds the harness in right there. Unfortunately, I could not, for the life of me, get that piece there out. So if this is important to you that you retain that, you'll notice that there's a sticker over this, but underneath there is actually a hole for this right there. Okay, so whatever your option is, you can do that. I'm not going to, because it really doesn't matter to me. The harness isn't going to be jostling around enough where it's going to come loose or anything. I mean, it's pretty compact in there, so I'm not worried about that. But anyway, now that this is done, I can go ahead and solder the positive and negative to these terminals, which in this case the positive is right here, the big fat one, and the negative is here. And usually what I find that is easier is I just take it, loop it up like this, and then run it through the hole. I'll probably have to do that, but anyway, you run it through the hole and then you twist it back, and then you just add solder right here at this point. I'll show you when it's done, but I find that to be easier rather than trying to hold it and solder it at the same time. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get that done. Alright, probably not solder job of the year, but it serves its purpose just fine. So now I've successfully transferred over the harness, so the speaker can now go back in the car. Alright, so there's the new speaker, and we'll go ahead and plug the harness back in, and we should be able to set the speaker down in the hole. Now you want to take note, depending on where the harness is, just make sure you don't twist it, and you want to make sure that you've got enough slack, because when you set the speaker in, there might not be much slack between where the harness is and where you put the speaker. Like for example, if I were to turn it this way, that doesn't leave a whole lot of slack for the harness, so I'm most likely going to turn it this way and set it in. But depending on how much slack you have will determine a good rotation for this actual speaker. Alright, so there's the speaker is in, setting in there. Now you need to take note, you can see right there, you can see where the hole is for the screw just to the left there, but then the hole for the speaker is to the right, so you just need to do a little adjusting. And what I find easier to do is to just adjust one end, so now I'm lined up, and then put the screw in to make sure it doesn't move around. Don't tighten it down, just put the screw in, and then go back to the other side, which this one is already almost lined up anyway. Just go to the other side, put that screw in after you've lined it up, and you should be good to go. But use your hands, your fingers, and get the screw in there, hand tighten it, make sure it's lined up properly, and then use either your Phillips head screwdriver to finish it off, or your socket, your 7mm socket. Okay, so I've got the screws in, but they're not tightened down all the way. One last note you need to be aware of is that you can see here how positioned to the left this speaker is. You need to make sure that it's clear for the actual cap to go on, because if there's not enough room there, you're gonna put this thing on, it's not gonna, you can see here, I need to get a little bit more space here. So what I'm gonna do is just take the speaker and just kind of push it over until it's centered up as best as it possibly can be. I've centered the speaker as much as I need to, and the installation is just about complete. Just need to get the cap, put that on there. Should be pretty easy to do. long as I've got the room, which it looks like I do. So there we go, all done. And that's it. That's how you change the center channel or dash speaker in your 04 to 08 Grand Prix with the Monsoon setup. So let's go ahead and see how this thing sounds. So we got talk radio on right now. Might be kind of annoying, but
I want to do something where it's just, you know, a projection of ego and a big smile and, you know, here I am at the top of my game.
Instead, she photographed the actors crying. Taylor Johnson did a video portrait commissioned by Britain's National Portrait Gallery of soccer star David Beckham, sleeping for 1 hour and 7 minutes. At the time, she was married, says Crutchfield, to another art.
So, voice, there's no rattle, no buzz, no nothing. So it sounds great. Actually, probably can't pick it up on the camera, but the audio quality has improved. I can tell the voice sounds clearer. So it's definitely a marked improvement. So anyway, if you have any questions, the install took all of about maybe 15 minutes. The longest part was actually the soldering portion. So if you have any questions, definitely let me know. If you do decide to take on soldering, make sure you're safe about it. I'm not going to be responsible if you burn yourself, cause a fire, burn your house down, or your dog dies. That's completely your responsibility. So if you need help doing it, ask somebody who's good at that stuff. Alright, so again, if you have any questions, let me know. Hopefully this video was helpful for you. Take care, guys.